Let the exhalations be deep and drop more and more deeply into the source of the self. As you exhale. Just let it go. All of that drama and identities exists on the surface level of our awareness. Exhale and drop deeply into the center of the self. Drop into the space of stillness. Drop into the source of love, of joy, of light. Drop deeply. With each exhalation, drop more deeply down into the source of the self. Letting the rest go. Gently bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes and slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome to SATSANG. What's the greatest benefit of being a sannyasi? So, I'll answer it for me on a personal level, but it's important to realize that there isn't one right path. Each of us has a different dharma to fulfill. And so while those of us who have taken vows of sannyas is the vows of renunciation. Sannyas is an order into which one is initiated. It's when you see the orange clothes like this, it's the monkhood or nunhood of the Hindu tradition. And so on that level, on the religious level, it's seen as the highest level that one attains. But that doesn't mean that prior to the last phase of your life, that's necessarily everyone's dharma. And interestingly, in the scriptures, the vast majority of both divine manifestations, divinity on earth, so whether it's Lord Krishna, whether it's Lord Ram, of the sages, the rishis, the vast majority of them are actually married. And I think the reason for that is to dispel any myth that you have to renounce the world in order to attain enlightenment or in order to attain the heights of spiritual progress. For me, the greatest benefit of it, and I think probably the reason that for those of us for whom it is their dharma, that we are drawn to it so deeply, is it gives us the ability to really have a single-minded path. If you are in a family and you've got a husband or a wife and children, there's an inevitable conflict, even if it's just within you, because there's always a choice. Every minute is a choice of, do I spend time meditating and doing my puja, doing my spiritual practice, doing my seva, or do I spend my time playing ball in the park with my son, or going for a walk, or hanging out with my kids, or doing their homework, or cooking them food, or with my spouse. And for me, the benefit of being able to live a life of sannyas is, it makes all of that much easier. You know, it's like I'm a vegan. I drink milk here in the ashram that comes from our very happy, very well-fed and well-loved cows. But otherwise, I don't drink milk anywhere outside. And so when I travel, I'm vegan. And when you go most places in the world and you're handed a menu of what to eat as a vegan, there's very few options usually. And sometimes I'll be with someone who will say, God, I'm so sorry, or the waiter or the waitress, when you say you're a vegan, oh, I'm so sorry, well, we could make you a plate of sauteed vegetables. And I always say, no, it's great. It makes it so much easier if I look at a menu and there's only one thing I can eat. I don't have to think about it. It's actually so much easier than looking at a menu of 40 different things that you have to decide what you feel like eating. I mean, here it's so great. You just sit down to eat, and whatever our beautiful cook has decided to cook is what dinner is or what lunch is. In 23 years, I've never had him once say to me, what do you feel like eating? What would you like? Here's all the items I have. What would you like? He just cooks. And so it's really nice, because then all of that extra energy that otherwise has to go into thinking about, what do I feel like eating tonight? What should I order in? What should I get at the restaurant? What should I cook? All of that extra energy gets to be spent on something else. What am I going to eat? Exactly what he serves me. And in the same way, being a sannyasi is very similar, where it's, what am I going to do? Well, when you don't have the relationships that are constantly pulling and you have to make this conflict or that decision, it makes things much more simple. When you don't have other duties, other responsibilities that are pulling on you, it's not meditate or. It's meditate. It's not seva or, it's seva. And there isn't someone saying, why don't you spend enough time with me? You know, I just come on. Do you really have to do so much seva? Come on, do you really have to meditate so much? Which one could only imagine in a family, these things happen. And so, for me, probably the greatest logistic benefit of a life of renunciation, a life of celibacy, a life where it's just about God, is you get to go at it single-pointedly, without these pulls. There's no question of should I or shouldn't I. Because there's a very clear set of rules, of restrictions, of vows. You know exactly what you should and shouldn't. And not only is it should or shouldn't, but it's a matter of actually having taken vows before God not to. And so it clears away a lot of the extra noise in the environment. And that being said, though, of course, that noise is very, very beautiful. If your dharma is to live a householder life, that extra noise of the relationships, of the families, of the duty is beautiful and wonderful, if that is your dharma. But on a personal level, for me, that's been a great, great benefit. The other benefit is, no matter how much we try to free ourselves of any identity, and that's a common theme. If you come to satsang frequently, it's a common theme that I talk about, is letting go of identities, because they do tend to kill us. They suffocate us. We identify as so much in our lives, our roles, our titles, our careers, our physical appearance, the color of our skin, our wealth. So most of us move through the world thinking about ourselves in a certain way. I'm the smart one, or I'm the stupid one, or I'm the popular one, I'm the beautiful one, or I'm the one nobody likes. Either way, these identities really suffocate us. Nonetheless, as we try to let them go, some little shadow, some little sprinkling of a concept of who you are stays with us. Not in the depths of meditation by any means, but as you move through the world, there is an awareness. And being able to have that identity of sannyasi, of someone whose life is dedicated to God, has been a great benefit for me. It's not about identifying with the world. It's about every single time I look down and I see this color. Every time I put my hand up to my head and have to be careful not to mess up my tilak that's here on my third eye. Every time I catch a glimpse of my reflection somewhere in the orange sari with the tilak, you remember, oh yeah, I've dedicated my life to God. Oh yeah, this is who I am. And so it's not about an identity to the world, but it is about an identity to the self, of remembering who you are and what your life is dedicated to. Otherwise, there is a lot of noise in the world, and there's a lot of pulls, people, culture. I mean, there's so much pulling at you saying, here's who you should be, here's what you should be, here's how you should think about yourself, here's how you measure up to others. And catching a glimpse of the saffron color, catching a glimpse or a feeling of the tilak on the face, and remembering, oh wait, I'm someone who has consciously, purposely renounced attachment to all of that in favor of God. And so I think for me that's the great benefit. That being said, of course, as I began to circle back, there is absolutely no requirement at all, either in present day or going back to scriptural times, that one renounce the world in order to have a very deep and fulfilling spiritual path. What isn't negotiable, what has to be renounced, is your attachment to all of the false self. So if you are in the householder world, in the family dharma, no problem. Use that. Use those relationships to connect with God. You don't have to identify as the richest husband at the party, or the most beautiful wife at the party, or just because you happen to be a husband or a wife and you happen to be at a party doesn't mean you have to lose yourself into false identities. Doesn't mean that you have to go along with all of the noise in the environment. The householder life as a path of spiritual awakening is not about agreeing to the illusion of I am the wife, or I am the husband, or I am the mother, I am this, and it's all about, who's going to be queen of this house, me or your mother-in-law, or me or my mother-in-law, your mother. It's about how can I see God through these loved ones? How can I serve God through these loved ones? So, okay, in the balance of seva versus householder tasks, okay, there may be less time for seva if you've got to put food on the table. How can putting food on the table become your seva? How can I see my family members as the divine so that grocery shopping, cooking, doing dishes becomes not something that pulls me away from my spiritual path, not something I have to rush through so I can meditate, but so it actually becomes my meditation. How can this relationship with a husband or a wife or children or parents become a way of connecting to God, instead of seeing them as those who bring home A's or bring home F's, or clean up their room or don't clean up their room, or do their chores or don't do their chores, or come home on time or don't come home on time. How can I see them as divine, as God in the form of my spouse, my children, my in-laws. God coming in a form to teach me in a very special way. So regardless of which path is your Dharma, all the paths are about go to God. It's just go to God through renunciation, through celibacy, through a conscious decision that that is going to be my relationship. Or it's go to God through other relationships. Either way, it's about go to God. And of course, even if your Dharma is the householder life, according to the Indian spiritual tradition, the final phase of our life should be the sannyasi phase anyway. There's 4 ashrams of life that we're given. The first is brahmacharya. That's up to about 25. It's the traditional years of studying. That's the time that we get our education, we focus on our studies. Then about 25 to about 50 is your householder phase. Get a job, make money, have a family, raise the kids, get the kids settled. Then is your vanprastha ashram stage, which is the stage of pulling back. Kids are grown, they're settled. Now they're having their own kids. They don't need you. You're retired from work. Those are the years that people start pulling away, engaging more and more in seva, more and more in spiritual service. And then ultimately, the last phase of life, traditionally it was 75 to 100, but I've heard it redone as people are no longer living to the yogi ages of 100 so frequently that it's now, instead of phases of 25, phases of 20. But either way, final phase is sannyasi, which is okay. You've done all that. In your landing phase of life, as Puja Swamiji calls it, how to get closer to God, because you know that's where you're going. And how to prepare. How to get very close. How to realize that this body, whatever is left of it, whatever strength I've got left, whatever days I've got left, whatever abilities I've got left, number 1, it's bonus. And number 2, how do I realize it's been given to me just as a bonus to serve? So, regardless of where you start, everyone experiences or should experience the sannyasi phase at some point in their life. So before I take any of the other questions that came in advance, are there any questions that anyone here has? Yeah. Yes, you and then you. Palaya.
You were initially describing how to withdraw the senses and put the awareness to the breath. Exhale, let it go. One of the meditative practices, I do that on a day-to-day basis.
He's asking about withdrawing the senses in meditation. I'll repeat it in a moment, but that's where we're going. Yes.
The practical difficulty that I face is to keep the attention on that.
How do you keep the attention on that withdrawal of the senses and on the breath?
And be on the breath or on the prayers. It doesn't matter if I consciously slip out of that. But the problem is it goes out unconsciously into the thought world.
So,
and how can I have a control over something that happens
unconsciously?
Unconsciously guide or
Yes, of course. Great. And this, by the way, this is the pervasive epidemic of the human mind. So don't feel badly. This is everyone's situation. He says, when we were meditating at the beginning, you were speaking about withdrawing the senses, focusing on the breath. He said, but if I do that, my awareness wanders. And it wanders unconsciously. He said, so how do I bring it back or control it from wandering if what's happening is unconscious? And it's actually very beautifully simple. Stay conscious. The nature of the subconscious mind is absolutely to do that. This is where, in all of our techniques that bring us into meditation, whether we focus on a candle flame, we focus on a prayer, we focus on a word, we focus on a mantra, we focus on our breath, it's all about bringing the awareness to one thing, to keep that mind from running around, to be conscious, to be mindful. Because if I'm conscious and mindful, I have that control. The minute I slip out of consciousness, the subconscious mind takes over. And yeah, it loves to run. But it isn't actually out of our control. So follow me for a moment. Here's what an example looks like. You're sitting and meditating, and suddenly you smell toast. Maybe your roommate or a family member is making toast, okay? You smell toast. Now, there's two choices in that moment. Option one, I stay conscious. And I say, smelling, or toast. And I bring the awareness right back to the breath. I stay fully conscious in it. Fully conscious in what smell came. I don't analyze it. I don't judge it. It has come into my awareness. I acknowledge it. I return to the breath. Option two is, toast. Hope it doesn't burn like last time. Oh my God, last time, cannot believe he almost set this house on fire. What am I going to do with that kid? Seriously, how many times do you have to teach them to stand there and watch the toaster? Oh my God, and he broke my blender last week. He was trying to spoon, seriously, in the blender? Like, who gave that kid his brains? I really, really should have sent him to that other school. This school, useless. Now, toast, school, kids, like, where have I gone? Now, that all, from the moment that I let my mind wander into toast land, I was finished. Now, if I meditate for a while and I've got a good practice, at some point along the way, I'm going to be aware I have run away. And I'm going to bring it back. But I've lost those precious moments. And sometimes it's 20 minutes later. Sometimes it's, all right, come next September, he's in a different school. That kid is going to have a list of responsibilities, no allowance this week until that next toaster, he's going to buy it out of his allowance. So I am reparenting. I'm spending my meditation time coming up with all of my new keep your kids in control technique. Not a bad thing to do by any means, but not meditation. But the only way to prevent that from happening is to stay conscious. The minute you lose it, it's a very slippery slope into total unconsciousness. This is where we have to be vigilant, really vigilant about staying conscious. But here's also a good way to practice. Don't only practice in your 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or 10 minutes or whatever it may be of meditation. Practice all day. Whatever you're doing, do it mindfully. As you walk, instead of having to walk from one place to another as a way to be looking at the phone and checking your messages. First of all, it's dangerous. There's incredible statistics of the number of injuries and deaths of people due to looking at their phones, so don't. But don't also use it as an opportunity to window shop or ruminate on all the things that went wrong in the meeting you're just coming from, or all the things that could go wrong in the meeting you're going to. Use it as a way to be mindful. You have to walk from one office to another, one building to another. Even just the driveway to the house. Walk mindfully. You're drinking a glass of water. Do it mindfully. Don't do it while you're on the phone. Stop what you're doing. It only takes 30 seconds. Drink it mindfully. Try to bring in more and more moments during the day that you can bring the awareness back. It'll become a beautiful cycle. Doing it in meditation will help you do it in your life, and doing it in your life will help you do it in meditation. But stay conscious, stay conscious, stay conscious. And the minute you notice that your mind has wandered, just bring it back. Don't yell at it, don't berate it, just bring it back. It's like how to keep the autopilot from kicking in will keep the pilot awake and alive. Right? I mean, the autopilot doesn't take over an airplane until and unless, I don't know exactly how it works, but presumably there's some system whereby the pilot gets up to go to the bathroom, an autopilot kicks in. Or the pilot has to lie down and go to sleep, autopilot kicks in. Or the pilot has a heart attack, God forbid, autopilot kicks in. So if you don't want autopilot to kick in, you keep that main pilot awake, alive, present. If you don't want your subconscious, unconscious to kick in, keep your conscious mind awake, alive, present.
It's always a fight.
He said it's always a fight. Don't call it a fight. Don't go to war with yourself. Think about it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity. You've got these different beautiful aspects of the mind. The difference is one of them takes you where you want to go. The other takes you only where you've already been. The subconscious mind cannot take you somewhere new. It runs on autopilot. Only that which you have fed to it, or in most cases someone else has fed to it. Because our subconscious mostly is programmed in very early childhood. So our subconscious takes us where we've already been. That same misery, that same fear, that same depression, that same not enoughness, that same place we've already been. The conscious mind takes you where you want to go. And the reason that you know that is because you're deciding. So when you decide where you want that conscious mind to go, that's where it takes you. Every time you go with the subconscious, you're going where you've already been. It's wasted time. So stay conscious. And yeah, it's a challenge. Not a fight, a challenge.
Yeah.
An opportunity to stay conscious. But start now. And then in the next moment, start now again. In the next moment, start now again. Every moment. And the payoff is, aside from the beautiful spiritual possibilities of what you actually can experience when you are present, is that you also give yourself the only possibility to experience not just enlightenment and awakening, but actually happiness, peace. All of that we're looking for in life can only be experienced when we are conscious. Good. Yes.
Namaste. We have two examples, or we can say we have two options to achieve God, as you earlier said. One is of renunciation, be a sannyasi, leave everything, go to a guru, chant mantra, focus on yourself and meditate. As many Hindu saints did, like Mirabai did, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. And we have other option. I am an ardent follower of Swami Vivekananda. He said, service to humanity is the service to mankind. And we have other option in which we dedicate our 24 hours, every drop of blood, working towards others. We have examples of like Mahatma Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, Swami Dayananda, Swami Vivekananda, where they sacrificed their whole life working for others. Which way is more prudent? Renunciation, focusing on self, attaining nirvana, or encouraging your abilities to work for others and make them smile? Which one is more prudent?
Great question. They're not actually two different paths. The path that you speak about of Swami Vivekananda, the path that so many of our saints, I mean, you've listed a whole bunch of them, but so many have given. This path of service, well, that's what we call karma yoga. Yoga's union with God. Karma's action. Karma yoga is union with God through action. What action? Well, certainly it's not just sitting here giving myself, a manicure. Not the easiest way to God. Not just, going out shopping so that I can have more clothes and, feel more beautiful because last year's styles are out. But service, as you said so beautifully, of mankind. Because serving mankind is serving God. Puja Swamiji always says, Mana Seva is Madhav Seva. Seva of people is seva of God. Service of humanity is service of God. The creation, whether it's mankind, womankind, humankind, or nature kind, animal kind, tree kind, rivers kind, mountain kind, all of the creation is divine. That is, by the way, the path of renunciation. The path of sannyas does not say don't act. It is not a renunciation of action. That is not the vows that get taken. It is not about, just you go to the guru and you sit in a cave and you meditate. Now, I'm sure there may be some lineages where that's what they do, but that is not the actual principle. And for example, here, Puja Swamiji's teachings are all about service. If you're not serving properly, his answer is, and this is where the two overlap so deeply and beautifully, his answer is, there is a problem in your meditation. Because when meditation is done right and happens right, the most automatic byproduct of that is service. When I experience the presence of God in me in a deep and real way, I open my eyes and I see God before me. And if I don't stand up from my meditation excited to be a tool in God's hands, if I don't stand up asking, what now, what now? Pujya Swamiji says there's a problem with your meditation. So they absolutely overlap. The dilemma is if you simply have service without the meditation, it's very difficult to free yourself of the ego. Now, we have had many leaders in our nation, and there have been many leaders in the rest of the world, who were not by any means renunciants. So Gandhiji was a householder. Martin Luther King was a householder. There's many, many, many examples. That doesn't matter. They don't need to renounce the relationship with the family in order to be that enlightened, awakened, pure vessel of service of the divine. Their connection to God, their meditative practices, was that which brought them to that height of both awakening, enlightenment, and therefore the ability to serve. You don't create that type of change in the world unless you are a clear vessel for God. And so if we don't have a spiritual practice, the problem is then our ego gets in. Then it becomes all about me and mine and whose name and who's doing what and blah, 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 that whole nonsense. And that keeps you from really serving anybody. And so this is where that essential aspect of renunciation is. If I'm working only to make lots of extra money for my immediate family or for my personal needs, so I can have shopping therapy, for example, or just my kids separate from the kids of the world, I'm not going to be able to be a pure vessel for God's will. Because I'm going to be very focused on how much is coming back in my pocket. It's not going to be about God's will, it's going to be about my will. How do I get the most so I can have the most? That needs to be renounced. But that can be renounced even living in a family. It can be renounced wearing orange, wearing white, going naked, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, or anything in between. Putting on a certain color does not, tragically, grant instant enlightenment. It would be very nice if it did. It's about the color of your heart. And so all of these leaders you've named, and so many others, are the saints of our nation. Whether they wore orange, whether they wore white, whether they wore pants and shirts or suits and ties or whatever they wore. They were the saints of this nation. And every one of them had renounced. They had renounced their egos. They had renounced their own attachments to their vision, their small agenda, in service. Not of just certain aspects of humankind, but of humankind because of their love of God. Every one of those people was a deeply spiritual person. Every one of them did the work that they did because it was their spiritual calling. And so the two paths, meditation, renunciation, and service, there is no distinction. They're not even two paths. They're different aspects of the same path. Now, for some, the renunciation may also include a renunciation of family into celibacy. For some, it may not. But the core renunciation is the renunciation of the ego, the renunciation of the attachment, the renunciation of the us versus them, the me, mine-ness. The renunciation of what's in it for me, where's my name. That's what needs to be renounced for us to actually be in service of anyone. Certainly to be a saint of the nation or the world. Yeah, wonderful.